Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
We're also getting some new information about the vaccination rollout in Florida. For more on that, I want to bring in CNN's Rosa Flores. She's joining us from Miami right now. Rosa, some senior citizens of Florida, they've been waiting in line for hours and hours, even overnight, to get the vaccine. You pressed the governor on this earlier today. Tell us about the exchange you had.
The governor really should have expected this question, because this is week 4 of the vaccine rollout in the state of Florida. And our cameras were rolling last week as seniors were waiting overnight to get the vaccine. On top of all of that, senior citizens across this state have been asked to go to a website to get an appointment to get this vaccine. And that website keeps crashing. It was a very simple question. Why? What has gone wrong? But Governor Ron Desantis wouldn't even let me finish asking my question. Take a listen. Governor, what has gone wrong with the rollout of the vaccine that we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashing?
There's a lot of demand. I think at the end of the day, excuse me.
If I could finish my question.
You just said what has gone wrong, so I'm answering the question.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech, or are you going to ask a question?
With all due respect, Governor,
you asked the question. I'm going to answer it.
I'm trying to finish my question.
You're giving a speech. You asked the question.
I am trying to ask you the.
You're going to ask how many questions? You get 3? They only got 1 question. Why do you get 3?
With all due respect, Governor, I'm just asking if I could finish my question.
You didn't. You finished the question.
I did not. My full question is, what went wrong with the rollout of the vaccine when we've seen phone lines jammed, websites crashing?
So you're repeating your question.
To complete it for you, Governor, we've seen websites crash and also senior citizens waiting overnight for the vaccine.
Where was that at?
We've seen it in Duval, Broward, Orange, and Lee County.
And why was, in Lee, why did that happen? Did you investigate why?
That's my question to you, Governor. You're the governor of the state. I'm not the governor of the state.
Okay, but you didn't investigate why that, in Lee County. Why was there a big line? Did you investigate why?
Could you tell us why?
Because we distributed vaccine to hospitals, and the hospital said, first come, first serve. If you show up, we'll do it. So they didn't use a registration system. There wasn't anything that was done, and there's a lot of demand for it. So people are going to want to go ahead and get it.
So are you saying there was no plan then from the state to make sure that senior citizens didn't wait outside overnight?
So the state is not dictating to hospitals we're not dictating to Carlos Magoya how he runs his operations here. That would be a total disaster. These guys are much more competent to be able to deliver healthcare services than a state government could ever be.
Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has maintained that his priority is to vaccinate Florida seniors here in this state. Now, my follow-up question to the governor was, why are assisted living facilities still waiting for vaccines? He didn't answer my question because he walked off right after that exchange.
You did an excellent job, Rosa. We're very proud of you. Good exchange indeed. He should be patient. He should answer these questions. These are life and death issues that especially people over 65 years old in Florida are facing right now. Thanks for that, for doing what you did. I want to bring in our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, right now. He's the author of a brand new book just coming out tomorrow. You got to get it. It's entitled Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age. I can't wait, Sanjay, to read your new book. It's going to be amazing. But let me get your reaction to what we just heard, that exchange that Rosa had with the Florida Governor, Ron Desantis. It's heartbreaking to see these elderly people just waiting in line, sitting there overnight because they hope they can get a vaccine.
Well, Wolf, I can tell you it strikes very close to home. First of all, what Rosa was asking about is happening. I mean, it's not an exaggeration. And I know this because my parents were two of those senior citizens who waited all night in Lee County to get their vaccines. The way it worked for them was that they basically wanted to get the vaccine. They started searching online to try and find where the vaccine might be available. They were told that the local library was going to have a certain number of doses. So they got there at 1:30 in the morning. It was like, camping out for a concert, except that my parents are in their late 70s. It's outside. They're trying to maintain distance. I think that's the frustration. And I think that's the frustration you're hearing from a lot of people. Fantastic that the vaccine is out there, but this is what it's sort of come down to as far as distribution goes in some places, not everywhere, but in some places. And it's as much preparation as there should have been. It should have been a more coordinated rollout in many of these places. I
don't understand, Sanjay, why FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or the National Guard, the military, has not been activated. People are dying. They activate the military and FEMA if there's a hurricane or a tornado. But why aren't they activated right now to get these shots into the arms, especially of the elderly?
I really don't know the answer to this, Wolf, but it's been a note that we've heard many times throughout this pandemic. We're going to do this at the federal level, and then the states sort of have at it. The states that have asked for, in the billions of dollars to create an infrastructure of public health that could handle something like this receive $480 million. So they've been woefully underfunded, and it's been very hard for them to then take a brand new vaccine that requires the kind of cold storage that everyone has heard about by now and be able to distribute it. So it's become a situation where people are sort of trying to fend for themselves. Like, again, my parents just sort of found this vaccine by on their own. There was no unified strategy to try and distribute it to them.
It is Tuesday, the 5th of January of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small, scant dash, a mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, historically speaking. Well, speaking of history, we got Georgia on our mind. But before we get into the Georgia issues, what about Ron DeSantis? Isn't he a pug? God, he looks like a pug. And he's just really a piece of work. What an angry man he is. And completely unqualified for the position. But I guess he got voted in, so we gotta have him, huh? What does it say about the voters? Anyway, what a cluster F that is. Making senior citizens, I guess I'm part of that now, but wait outside overnight. And then most of them were sent home. Oh, sorry, we ran out. Oh, really? And Ron DeSantis says that individual hospitals are better equipped to be able to roll out the vaccine than the state help? Than the state getting involved? Well, why are you governor, asshat? If you don't think government works, why are you there? We know what it's about. And it's not going to work anymore. We're taking our country back. And what is this about real America? I guess we're just going to put Ron DeSantis we'll put him in a barrel over here. Let's talk about this weird QAnon lady from California who wants to walk around D.C. with her Glock in violation of the law. because real Americans want to show these weird D.C. residents, I think she means black people, what real America is and how they live, and they're not going to let anybody tell them how to protect their families. You know what, B? It's against the law to carry that Glock around. Do you have a concealed permit? Because I don't know if she's going to be able to get a concealed permit. She's been arrested and convicted 4 times and is currently under investigation for giving an unregistered gun to a teenager working at one of her restaurants. And she's going to tell people in D.C. what real America is while she walks around in 4-inch stilettos. Real America. Come on. Pretty face, put a gun, stiletto heels. I think they got their soft porn model that's going to take over Melania's position when she goes back to Slovenia, because, you know, that's where she's going. Yep. Maybe they're going to drop her off. Apparently, Trump is going to fly Air Force 2 to Turnberry in Scotland on the 19th, the day before the inauguration. Now, a lot of people are speculating, oh, he's going to just stay at Turnberry. No, I think it's a stopover. I think he's going somewhere else. And where might that somewhere else be? Well, it ain't Finland, but right there on the other side of the border of Finland, maybe. Maybe not right over the border, but you know what's right over on the border of Finland? That country. I think he's on the way there. But he may want to put in a few rounds of golf at Turnberry, and that's what I think they ought to just, you know, maybe repo the jet. If he's there after the swearing in, because I think that's when it's officially done, the actual swearing in. Or maybe it's the next day. I got to look. But if he's there on the 21st, repo the jet. If you can't do it, you know, right after Joe's been sworn in, repo the jet. Let him figure out how to get around. Sort of like what he did to Comey. You know, Comey was out on the West Coast about ready to give a speech when he heard on Twitter, well, an aide told him who read it on Twitter, that Trump had fired Comey. and then Trump was pissed off that Comey came back to D.C. on the FBI jet. What? He's not allowed to do that. He's fired. Well, you know what? You were kicked out of office, you mobster. And if you're overseas, I don't know. I guess you can keep your Secret Service protection. Or maybe you can get some private help from that country on the other side of Finland. Maybe they can protect you. All right. Well, Glenn Greenwald is on Twitter right now, just all up in arms about, well, how did democracy survive when 2/3 of the Democrats believed that Russia hacked our election in 2016 and actually flipped votes? How did our democracy survive that? I'll tell you how. We didn't foment an armed insurrection and then Hillary calling up state electors and threatening them. That's how it survived. Glenn Greenwald, where's this guy coming off? I'll tell you where he's coming off. In Brazil. Right there in Brasilia. Can't even muster up enough fortitude to right here in America. Well, he's not on The Intercept anymore. Maybe I'll start reading The Intercept now. Still have a hard time doing it. Every time I see The Intercept has been responsible for a retweet, I don't know if I should open it up or retweet. But I think maybe we can get over it. Glenn's not a part of that anymore, thankfully. Well, another big day of news. Got that Georgia election, and boy, oh boy, Trump is in deep water. But already they're parsing it, saying, oh, it's not, I don't know, it might have been illegal. Did you hear anything illegal there? Yeah. I don't know. It's right there on tape, and you know it's not the only time he has ever threatened state electors or officials. I want to hear those tapes. I also love the fact that the first go-to that the GOP and, the maggots started spouting off on about snitches get stitches. Who says that? Mobsters. Yeah, they're a mob cult. The first thing that came out of their mouths was not that Trump was violating the law, but how dare someone tape him violating the law? Yeah, well, you know what? Before I go on with and finish up the thought on this, I need to interject another fool out there saying that there's a man code, that you don't make public what you said in private. You know what, asshole? You're mistaking the man code, or whatever you call a man code. In fact, I think you smell. Yeah, you do smell. I think you spelled mob code incorrectly. What you're talking about is a mob code. A real man, when a crime is being committed, turns that evidence over to the cops. What is wrong with you? I refuse to allow this nation and this government to descend into this organized mob. Oh, I know we can argue that it's been that way for quite a while and the whole construct of government is a protection racket, yada, yada, yada. I refuse to allow mobsters run this government and turn it into what Putin has turned Russia into. No, not going to happen. The people have spoken. I know the GOP says, not those people. We don't want those people speaking. Too bad. The minute that we said that a black man was, fit for office to be president of the United States, that's when they took out a blowtorch to destroy a democracy. It's not as if this just came out of the blue. They've been nullifying democratic elections for decades. And I'm warning you, you make nice with mobsters, you might get a bullet in the back of the head while watching a play somewhere in D.C., maybe. I would be careful. History resonates. We know what they are capable of. We know what their intentions are. We know what the results can be. Dare we go down that path again? Or maybe we don't make nice with mobsters, seditious insurrectionists. I know we have to seat these seditious insurrectionists, the 140 and counting GOP who want to destroy democracy. I know we have to seat them. It's process. They use process against us. Will we use process to save us? Well, Al Gore did the right thing. He absolutely did the right thing. Look where we are. Am I proposing we do the wrong thing? I am proposing that maybe if you're going to fight fire with fire, I don't know. Maybe we need the heat of the sun if we're going to fight fire with fire. I think that's what it takes. None of this, let's just put on sunglasses and get along. It's not going to work. As soon as they find another opening, they will take it with no thought involved. It is their nature. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, by the way, as if you didn't know. Well, on the rest of the menu, the Trump administration wants to give grazing rights to the Oregon ranchers who triggered the armed takeover of the Malheur Federal Wildlife Refuge by right-wing extremists. That's one way of calling them. I call them seditious insurrectionists, too. White nationalists, even. Northwest states and 29 tribes sued the Trump administration from selling the National Archives building in Seattle and relocating millions of Northwest historical records to Missouri. What is up with Trump? Well, we know exactly what's up with him. And Trump's EPA finalizes last-minute limits on science and research used in rulemaking. Oh, and guess what? They're putting it in cement so you can't take it out till 2025. Merry Savage Christmas. Happy New Year. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Turkish police clashed with students protesting the Erdogan-appointed university head. And a U.S. judge blocked sanctions that targeted human rights lawyers working for the War Crimes Tribunal. Oh, well, at least we got one win, and a very important one at that. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, though she be quite busy this time of year. And thank you, Kelly, for everything that you do. To the left of the chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and we have that there because, yeah, we ask for money because we pay our bills. And we actually, all kidding aside, confessions made, yeah, we need your help paying our bills. Though the bulk of how we do this comes out of our own wallets, and Tom will let you know about that here in not too long from now. We still rely upon your generosity to help us get over that hump, and we thank you for your generosity, and especially to those who have increased their donations over time and have been with us for quite a while now. So we will be celebrating our 10-year anniversary coming up here in a month or so. And so thank you for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty, because Resistance Radio is a civic duty, especially in these times of peril. If you are able to afford an espresso-type coffee drink and you could send those funds our way once a month, we can assure you, and we have like I mentioned, a long track record of being able to stretch those dollars, pay our bills, fly under the radar, continue resisting as the founders originally intended. And yes, thank you for your generosity, and thank you for considering doing so in the future. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that and everything else that you do. I, of course, take care of me, and me being at Justice Putnam on Twitter. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter and other social media platforms, as one will do. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is out of the Associated Press by Andrew Zelsky. The federal government has proposed awarding grazing allotments to an Oregon ranching family whose members were convicted of arson in a court battle that triggered the takeover of a federal wildlife refuge by right-wing extremists. The December 31 action by the Bureau of Land Management in favor of Hammond ranches angered environmental groups. Well, I think it would anger more than just environmental groups. Giving the permit to the Hammonds shows a flagrant disregard for the rule of law and is clearly a political move rather than a responsible allocation of public lands, said Eric Mulvar, executive director of Western Watersheds Project. Stephen Hammond, co-owner of the ranch, and his father Dwight were both convicted of arson for setting fire to rangeland and sent to prison for a mandatory 5-year sentence. Why were they committing arson in rangeland? They had poached hundreds of deer, and they burned down the forest to cover their tracks. That led to the armed occupation of Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Oregon for 41 days in 2016. Armed takeover. One occupier was shot dead by Oregon State Police. They say he reached for a pistol at a roadblock. Donald Trump pardoned the Hammonds in 2018, allowing them to be freed from federal prison. In a proposed decision made on December 31st, the BLM said Hammond ranches should be apportioned all available forage in the Bridge Creek area grazing allotments in the high desert of eastern Oregon, covering about 26,000 acres. They poached hundreds of deer on federal land, burned it to the ground, and now Trump is giving them that land. The federal agency cited the Hammonds' extensive historic use of these allotments, past proper use of rangeland resources, a high level of general need, and advantages conferred by topography. But in 2014, when Barack Obama was president, the BLM denied Hammond Ranches a grazing permit renewal, saying it does not have a satisfactory record of performance, and cited numerous incidents of arson, burning the forest down, burning federal forests. At the Hammonds trial, witness testified that a 2001 arson fire occurred shortly after Steve Hammond and his hunting party illegally slaughtered hundreds of deer on BLM property. One said Stephen Hammond handed out matches with instructions to light up the whole country, quote, end quote. The jury also convicted Stephen Hammond for a 2006 blaze. Western Watersheds Project and Wild Earth Guardian said they plan to protest the proposed decision. With one foot out the door, the Trump administration is trying to allow these bad actor permittees to run roughshod over public land, said Sarah McMillan, conservation director for Wild Earth Guardians. Any protest by an interested party should be made within 15 days of being advised of the proposed decision, with a final decision issued thereafter, said BLM spokeswoman Tara Thiesel. Johnson of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Washington, Oregon, more than 24 Native American and Alaska Native tribes, along with culture groups from the Northwest, are suing the federal government to stop the sale of the National Archives building in Seattle, a plan that would force the relocation of millions of invaluable historical records to California and Missouri. The government is planning to sell the vast warehouse under a law aimed at unloading excess federal property. But the lawsuit, filed in U.S. District Court yesterday, Monday, says the building is anything but excess. It contains irreplaceable documents dating to the 1840s and is used all the time for research about everything from tribal history to Japanese internment during World War II and fur seal hunts on remote Alaskan islands from before even when the Russians were stealing it. This is the DNA of our region, Washington Attorney General Bob Ferguson told an online news conference yesterday, Monday. These are documents that are not digitized. Moving them thousands of miles away essentially and effectively eliminates public access to these critical documents. The National Archives building is one of a dozen properties around the country, collectively valued at $500 million to $750 million, that have been identified for sale by the Public Buildings Reform Board. The board initially intended to sell the properties individually, but has announced that due to the COVID-19 pandemic's effort on the commercial real estate market, it will offer the buildings early this year for an expedited sale as a single portfolio. Nothing like disaster capitalism now, isn't it? The records would be moved to National Archive facilities in Kansas City and Riverside, California. How nice. The Seattle building has a reported $2.4 million maintenance backlog and costs more than $350,000 a year to operate, but sits on land that would be prime for residential development. Oh, you mean like a condo high-rise built by Trump? Or at least branded by him? Please. The sale is opposed by all 8 U.S. senators and many representatives from Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. The records stored in Seattle's federal archives are vital to telling the story of the Pacific Northwest history. Washington Senator Pat Murray, the third most senior Democrat in the Senate, she said that in an email statement yesterday, Monday. I look forward to working with the incoming Biden-Harris administration to explore every option available, including the appropriations process, to ensure that they remain accessible to local stakeholders. The lawsuit says the Seattle Archives is ineligible for sale under the Federal Asset Sale and Transfer Act, which exempts buildings used for research in connection with federal, agricultural, recreational, or conservation programs. Among other things, the lawsuit noted, the archives are used for research under federal historical preservation programs and to litigate land use, water rights, and conservation issues. No wonder they want to get rid of it. Gardner of Reuters brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency chief said on Monday yesterday he has finalized a rule to limit what scientific research the agency can use to formulate regulations, and a concession to big business weeks before Donald Trump leaves office. Under the rule, the EPA will no longer be able to rely on scientific research that is underpinned by confidential medical and industry data. Opponents of the rule, including public health advocates and environmentalists, said it would harm human health protections by making it harder to craft air and water regulations. For decades, the EPA has relied on scientific research rooted in confidential medical and industry data as a basis for its air, water, and chemicals rules. While the agency publishes large amounts of research and data, the confidential material has been held back. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler said in an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal later that the agency had relied on secret science. And the strengthening transparency and regulatory science rule would allow more public scrutiny of the science used in rulemaking. Our rule will prioritize transparency and increase opportunities for the public to access the dose response data that underlies significant regulations and influential scientific information, Wheeler said in the editorial. Well, that's a word salad, I would think. He said dose response data explain the relationship between the amount of a chemical or pollutant and its effect on human health and the environment. The rule will likely be overturned by President-elect Joe Biden, who takes office on January 20th, and, like many Trump-era environmental rollbacks, could be challenged by environmentalists in court. When the measure was proposed in 2018, it was billed by then EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt as a way to boost transparency for the benefit of the industries the agency it regulates. But environmentalists denounced the rule. If left unchallenged, this rule would essentially bar the agency from using the most relevant medical studies when creating rules about air pollution, toxic chemicals, water contaminants, and more, and could also force the agency to revoke decades of clean air protections, Chris Zarba, former director of the EPA Science Advisory Board, said. All right, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You're listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
I guess we're sort of in the middle of a major virology education.
Charles Rice of the Rockefeller University in New York City.
I think that, the field has definitely changed, since the days when I was a graduate student. And I think one of the things that is very reassuring now is really the global response to this pandemic in the sort of academic and clinical and, sort of pharma communities. The rate of progress.
Earlier today, October 5th, 2020, Rice was informed that he had won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for the discovery of the virus that causes hepatitis C. The identification of the virus has led to tests and treatments for the condition. Rice shared the prize with Harvey Alter of the National Institutes of Health and Michael Houghton of the University of Alberta.
It took us months and months of toil to sequence a single viral genome. Now people can do that in a matter of hours. And the rate at which people have been able to sort of make progress on understanding SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 is just spectacular.
Rice spoke this morning on a web press conference from Rockefeller University.
So I think it's taught us a lot of things about science in general. If there's really a pressing problem, we sort of mobilize people all around the world to sort of work on these problems. Really, great progress can be made. People would love to have a cure in a week or a vaccine in a week. I mean, that's not feasible. But the speed with which good therapeutics and vaccines will be developed for SARS-CoV-2 to prevent COVID-19 is going to be spectacular. And it has a way of, I think, really sort of changing the way that science is done to really make it, sort of more of a community effort rather than something that many years ago might have been pursued by a few labs in isolation. So I think the sort of young virologists today just have this amazing collection of tools and capabilities to understand what's going on in virus biology and the host response at a level that was just never before possible. I'm very optimistic on the sort of future of this, and I do hope that maybe the success with hepatitis C and what I would predict the sort of eventual success in getting a handle on the current coronavirus pandemic that we face will, sort of encourage us to not only recruit more virologists, but also, just sort of encourage people to study these little troublemakers, because you never know when they're going to pop up and cause trouble. So it's worth a small investment.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
In 2012 in the United States, about 317,000 motor vehicle crashes involved a large truck. 26,000 truck drivers and their passengers were injured in these crashes, and about 700 died. Trucker safety requires an alert, buckled-up, experienced driver with a reliable vehicle and a strong employer safety program. Seatbelts are the most effective way to prevent an injury or death in a motor vehicle crash, but in 2013, 1 in 6 drivers of large trucks didn't use their seatbelts. Employers can help truck drivers stay safe by committing to driver safety programs at the highest level of leadership, establishing and enforcing driver safety policies, including requiring everyone in the truck to buckle up, and addressing factors that contribute to crashes, such as drowsy and distracted driving. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Will violence play a part in American elections?
I'm Tom Hartman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
In Georgia, there have been numerous threats made against election officials and their families, officials who have attested to the accuracy of the presidential election results, including the chief election officer, Gabriel Sterling, and Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, who we note are Republicans and supporters of Trump in the election. In response to the threats, Sterling said that the president needed to step up and say, "Stop inspiring people to commit potential acts of violence. Someone is going to get hurt. Someone is going to get shot. Someone is going to get killed. It is not right." A Trump campaign spokesman in response said, "No one should engage in threats or violence, and if that has happened, we condemn that fully." Mr. Sterling said that for him, the straw that broke the camel's back was a threat against a 20-year-old contractor for a voting systems company who had been targeted by someone who hung a noose and declared that the worker should be hung for treason. "I can't begin to explain the level of anger I have right now over this," said Sterling. "And every American, every Georgian, Republican and Democrat alike should have that same level of anger." He continued, "Elections are the backbone of democracy, and all of you who have not said a damn word are complicit in this."
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because democracy and advocacy begin with you, and freedom can't defend itself.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. James Madison's strong belief in religious freedom is evident in his drafting of the U.S. Bill of Rights. He had originally opposed adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution because he doubted the effectiveness of mere paper barriers to tyranny, and because he did not see a need for such formal guarantees in a government limited to enumerated powers. He had promised his Baptist friends and others, however, that he would work for the addition of a Bill of Rights if the Constitution were adopted. He also became convinced that a formal Declaration of Rights would widen support for the new Constitution and would help the nation's courts protect the rights of minorities against majority encroachments. Almost single-handedly, Madison worked through the summer of 1789 to draft and secure agreement on the measure, overcoming the apathy and skepticism of congressional colleagues and working out an acceptable draft from among many proposals required all of Madison's political skills. Though many among the framers could claim to have had a hand in fathering the Constitution, the Bill of Rights was primarily Madison's offspring. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Gosh, our trasher-in-chief has really been busy lately, calling Kamala Harris nasty and calling our post offices a joke. But instead of trash talking, shouldn't a president be, running the government? Nah, that bores him. Besides, that's why he packed his cabinet with all those corporate lobbyists who are skilled at trying to rig our government to serve moneyed elites. Now, empowered by Trump, these special interests are our government, literally setting and running America's economic, environmental, health, and other public policies. And what a job they're doing. On us. Check out Andrew Wheeler, head of Trump's EPA. He had been the top lobbyist for a coal mining giant, constantly fighting environmental rules to make this notoriously foul industry clean up its act. Now, the befouler's lobbyist is making the rules, allowing big coal and other fossil fuel giants to pour more toxic contaminants into our air and water. Wheeler wails that his poor multi-billion-dollar former clients must be freed from burdensome requirements to limit the damage they do to the health of America's people and our planet. Burdensome? His latest edict frees oil and gas corporations from having to fix methane leaks in their wells, pipelines, etc. Fixing leaks is burdensome? Hello, if you had a gas leak at your house, would you not want to burden the company to come fix it? Not only is methane a potent greenhouse gas causing climate change, but Wheeler's don't worry about it favor to his industry buddies comes just as scientists have discovered that methane leaks are 2 to 3 times worse than his EPA has been reporting. This means the industry is driving us toward a climate crisis faster than anyone realized. This is Jim Hightower saying, talk about nasty. The Trumpeteers have turned government totally bass-ackwards, protecting polluters instead of people.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1804. That was the day Ohio became the first non-slave-holding state to enact a series of black codes. Ohio had previously been a part of the Northwest Territory, which barred slavery in 1787. When Ohio entered the Union in 1803, its Constitutional Convention had established the previous November that slavery would not exist in the state. But delegates were split evenly regarding black suffrage and ultimately voted to disenfranchise African Americans. Several months later, Ohio caved to pressure from the nearby slaveholding states of Kentucky and Virginia. The state enacted codes to restrict immigration of free blacks and runaway slaves. In order to settle and work in Ohio, blacks had to present a certificate of freedom, register, and pay a registration fee. The black codes also enforced compliance with fugitive slave laws and set a precedent for neighboring northern states to develop their own. The codes became more oppressive in 1807, when they were amended to also require a $500 good behavior surety bond as a requirement for residents. Despite this and other restrictive measures, the black population of Ohio grew annually, as blacks escaped north to freedom by following the Ohio River and Underground Railroad in the state and neighboring Pennsylvania. Abolitionism as a movement began in the state as early as the 1820s, when John Rankin moved to Ripley, Ohio, to join the anti-slavery communities and establish his home as a beacon of safety for blacks escaping the South. The movement gained steam in the 1830s with the founding of the Ohio Anti-Slavery Society, the newspaper The Philanthropist, and Oberlin College. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 34 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high topping out, probably 45 to 48. Depending on whether you're in a sheltered valley or not. Might have a little bit of drying out, only in that we won't have the copious amounts of rainfall that we've had in the last several days. Winds will be light and variable, though tonight we will have cloudy conditions with an occasional rain shower late, bringing about a quarter of an inch of rain overnight, and then about that much tomorrow. Highs near 47, winds light and variable, and we'll have rain all day tomorrow. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked to 6,108, with 72 deceased, and I believe they've taken 2 off from that total from over the weekend, so it's still gross undercounts, and that's just the way it's going to be. Pollen is rated at none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 31 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is a wintertime low of 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.25 inches. Visibility is down to a quarter mile, and relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Wow, I've been doing this P-tape with the introduction to the international weather for 4 years now almost. And we may change it as soon as January 20th comes. We don't need a P-tape anymore. Though poppin' peas is a radio no-no, but everyone does it. Anyway, it looks like London is 40 degrees with rain. Paris is 38 and cloudy. Rome is 46 with rain and a wind advisory. Kyiv is 31 and cloudy. Kabul is 35 with its winter smoke. Hong Kong is 58 degrees and clear. Tokyo is 42 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 70 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and partly cloudy. And New York is a chilly 38 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous. Reuters staff working like worker bees bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Turkish police clashed yesterday, Monday, with students who protested against President Erdogan's appointment of a new rector at one of the country's top universities, saying the process was undemocratic. In a decree published on Saturday, Erdogan appointed Mila Belu, who has a doctorate in business management, as rector of Boğaziçi University in Istanbul. The move led to protests by students and academics, and footage on social media showed hundreds of students carrying signs calling for Bulu's resignation. They chanted slogans including, "Mali Bulu is not our rector," and "We don't want a state-appointed rector." Some students who were able to enter the campus sealed one of the university's buildings. Later footage showed students clashing and scuffling with security forces at the entrance of the campus. Istanbul police did not immediately comment, because why would they? Belu, who Turkish media say applied to be a candidate for Erdogan's ruling AK party in a 2015 parliamentary election, was the first rector chosen from outside a university since a military coup in Turkey in 1980. In a statement shared on social media, faculty said, "We do not accept it as it clearly violates academic freedom and scientific autonomy, as well as the democratic values of our university." The appointment was yet another case of many ongoing anti-democratic practices since 2016, they said, referring to a large-scale crackdown since a failed coup 5 years ago. Authorities have arrested thousands of academics, lawyers, journalists, civil servants, and members of the military as part of a crackdown. Critics say Erdogan's government has used the coup attempt as a pretext to quash dissent. The government says the measures are necessary because of security threats facing Turkey. Of course, every demagogue deems academic freedom a security threat.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Jonathan Stemple of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A U.S. judge yesterday, Monday, blocked the Trump administration from sanctioning human rights lawyers for supporting the work of the world's war crimes tribunal, the International Criminal Court. U.S. District Judge Catherine Polk Faria in Manhattan issued a preliminary injunction against the White House from imposing criminal or civil penalties against 4 law professors under an executive order from Trump last June. Trump had authorized economic and travel sanctions against employees of the Hague-based ICC and anyone supporting its work, including a probe into whether U.S. forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan between 2003 and 2014. Faria said the plaintiffs would likely succeed in showing that Trump's order unconstitutionally stifled their speech, resulting in irreparable harm. The court is mindful of the government's interest in defending its foreign policy prerogatives and maximizing the efficacy of its policy tools, she wrote. Nevertheless, national security concerns must not become a talisman used to ward off inconvenient claims. Indeed. Well, we should be signatories to the Geneva Convention once again and to the International Criminal Court, and I hope Joe Biden does that. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.